up, everybody? This is Jordan Kurtz with the comments from the Peanut Gallery podcast. We're about to get into the thick of things with our guest referee, Bobby Wombacher, but definitely wanted to take a quick second before we got there to mention a company that is very close to us here at CFTPG, and that is the Terphouse. Got Terps? I do. What's the Terphouse? The Terphouse is the cannabis industry's most trusted source for reliability, convenience, and higher potency levels than any other industry competitors within the medicated oils. What makes the Terphouse so unique is that they add in natural terpenes for absorption and brain activation. The terpenes are natural oils that are found inside the botanical parts of the plants that give them their taste and their smell. They're an essential part of getting the full benefit of the CBD. If you're looking for full spectrum alternatives, those are definitely out there as well. The Terphouse has an awesome selection of THC infused vape pens. But the primary component of the main oils that you're seeing right here, that is something that is THC free. That is something that you will not test hot on a drug screen, so it's not going to impact any sort of performance enhancing tests if you're an athlete, nor is it going to impair any sort of employment tests if you are concerned about that. One thing that is huge about the Terphouse is their impeccable customer service, which is something that is rare in the corporate world of today. They are great about answering any sort of questions that you may have about their products or about just the science behind CBD in general. They have a quick turnaround as far as the time frame of getting back to those questions and your orders that are out there. And like I say, they do take a very, very strong sense of pride in the quality of the products, which is definitely something that's important within this industry to know where everything is sourced. So shout out to the Terphouse for literally changing lives out there. It's incredible to see you guys on the broadcast like this last weekend on LFA all over the place. Thank you very much for everything that you do. Got Terps? I do. And now we get going on with the show.
Oh, would you please just let me go? 'Cause I don't want to know. Would you please just let me go? Bad medicine.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Comments from the Peanut Gallery podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Kurtz. I'm joined here right now with a very special guest, referee Bobby Wombacher. How you doing today, boss?
Fantastic. And yourself?
I'm doing great, man. It was a beautiful day out here in Colorado. Definitely enjoying these last few, what feels like, summer days before those fall breezes start to kick in.
Yeah. It was a little toasty here in Utah today, but we'll take it. I don't want it to get cold. So.
I can't imagine there. So, you're out in Utah right now, but, you're pretty much all over the map, right?
Yeah, I do a fair amount of traveling, correct.
So, why don't you just tell us a little bit more about yourself? Where can people follow you on social media? What's been going on for you?
All right. You can find me on Instagram at referee_Bobby_Wombacher, or on Facebook at MMA referee Bobby Wombacher. I've just been blessed and been able to travel all over and ref as many fights as I possibly can. Last weekend I did LFA on Friday night in Nebraska, and then did a show Saturday in Nevada. So, that's a pretty good weekend for me.
That is pretty solid. So what was the promotion that you did in Nevada? It
was WFC 95. They're all over as well, but they were in Nevada. So, yeah, it was a good show.
I definitely can speak from a biased standpoint that I was a big fan of the LFA broadcast the other night.
Yeah.
We had Austin Jones, shout out to you, Osmosis, showed out and got the victory. And then also I want to throw a shout out to Brandon Raw Dog Royval in the co-main event, who also got the victory. Shout out to Factory X on the chest out there, Coach Mark Montoya.
Yeah, those are both great fights. I believe the Austin Jones fight was a split decision, I believe.
It was a split decision.
And then the co-main was just phenomenal. And when I'm not in the cage, I'm sitting next to the cage, so I get a real good seat. And those were both fantastic fights. So good fights.
Definitely. It was It was interesting for the Austin Jones fight, just because it seemed like Dwayne Johnson never really stopped chirping the entire time. Were you able to hear any of that dialogue sitting cage side?
Yeah, and if it had come across, there would have been a lot of censorship on it. So, yeah, it was a pretty pretty strong language being used.
I can imagine. Look, just by the look of it alone.
Right.
Well,
and that all started the night before when I guess he brought a pillow to the weigh-ins or something.
Yep.
And someone had told me about that, and I just said, this has potential to be fight of the night, because you do that, either you're getting knocked out or the other guy's getting knocked out. I mean, that's just all there is to it.
Exactly. So. Definitely bringing some extra theatrics into the mix with that. How do you approach that as an official? If does anything ever get too far over the top in terms of some of the the trash talk or anything like that goes on inside the cage, or what's been your experience with that personally?
Sure. I did the Felice Herrig and Courtney Casey UFC fight in Detroit, where it got kind of heated, and they both I think Courtney flicked bloody boogers on Felice, and then they both started using the F word and flipping each other off. And that's when, as an official, you just got to tell them to keep it down, because there's kids watching, and it's okay to have your beef and get in the cage, but when it comes to that, we're still a very small and young sport. We want it to continue to grow, and you got a lot of impressionable people out there that are watching, and they may be the next great fighter, or whatever. So you just got to keep it as tone as possible. And there's always going to be beef with some of the fighters. The Diaz's, when they get in there, they do that stuff, and it works. It works. It sells. People tune in. But there's a line that you don't go over, and I don't think that on that Austin fight, I don't think it ever crossed the line. I mean, the language was strong, but nobody could hear it, so that's the difference.
No, totally understandable. And for the record, I'm not here saying that I thought that he was
Right.
across the line or anything to that. But there's obviously examples out there where
Sure.
that's been the case in the situation. So just always interested in hearing someone who's been literally in inside that third person while that sort of dialogue or confrontation might be going on.
Right.
Do you keep it? Is it something that runs through your mind? Like, hey, we're on TV. This is being broadcasted. Does that come into play when you're, when you're in the middle of the action? I know you're trying to be as much in the moment as you possibly can be, but on those televised cards, is that something that also kind of plays into your judgment process?
It really doesn't, because people have asked me about doing the UFC and stuff like that, and until you do it, you really don't understand what I'm about to say, but. For me, it's just another building and another cage, and two athletes that are, performing. When the lights come on, you don't realize, or I don't. It just goes by me, that there could be a million people watching or whatever it is, because you're just so focused on the athletes that are in there. You don't hear the crowd, and you don't hear the corners generally. You're just laser focused on those athletes because they deserve that. So there's no. I try to treat it the same whether there's 200 people in the stands or 15,000, because the athletes are the same. They've trained, they've worked hard, they deserve it. So regardless if it's amateur, pro, small show, big show, they deserve the best officiating that they can get, and the best opportunity to perform their skill set. So.
No, that's very honorable, especially because of what's on the line for these guys in this situation. So, Bobby, you've mentioned some of the big promotions out there that people would naturally recognize, your Bellators, UFCs, LFAs. Right. When did this journey, or where did this journey, how did this all start for you?
It started a little over 6 years ago. I was training to fight, and I had a cyst on my left shoulder blade that I had to get taken out. And then it got infected, so they had to reopen it and leave it open and pack it every day. So they said I couldn't roll or grapple. And I was living in Utah at the time as well. And right before that, I had moved from Hollywood. And I remember getting a Herb Dean flyer about, refereeing. And, up until that point, I was a super fan like everybody else. I watched all the pay-per-views, plan my trips, vacations and trips around, that pay-per-view that's coming up, and, went to many live pay-per-views and, events and stuff like that. And they said, you couldn't grapple or roll for 6 months. And I thought, well, I want to do something to stay involved in the sport. So, a little while later, I think a month later or so, I was on a plane and flew out to Pasadena and took Herb's course. And, that started the everything in motion. And, it's very difficult to do what I do. And, I failed the first time I went to Herb's class because I went in as a fan and thought I knew everything. And, I knew all the rules and I knew all of those things, but the practical part, I didn't have as much of a clue as I thought I did because, as a referee, you got to be able to know how to apply the holds and how to disassemble them so that you can prevent people from being injured further in the cage. That's our job. And so, that's where it started. And, after I went and took Herb's and failed it, I went the next month and took Kevin McDonald's course, and I took Rob Hines' course a month after that, passed both of those, and then it took me 6 months before I ever got in the cage. That's just because you pass a class or whatever, that doesn't mean you're going to get used or that you're any good. That means that you pass the class and that's it. So, it's a long journey, and a lot of people, don't stick it out or can't stick it out. And, that's the reason why, it's an honor every time I get a step in the cage, because the fighters deserve the best, and I try to give it every time I'm there, regardless of the size of the show. So that's how I got started.
Pretty crazy, Herb Dean, obviously one of the most recognizable faces on the officiating side. What's it mean to you that he was kind of the one who brought you? If people, in my opinion, if people think of officials in MMA, they think of one of two names.
Sure.
It's either Big John or it's Herb Dean.
Right.
So, to kind of been brought up underneath, or that been your entry into the game. What was that? How did that feel?
It feels good. Both of those guys, I can call at any time and they'll give me advice. And that's the way it's always been with them. And, that's the other thing about our communities is so small. I could pick up the phone and call either one. I could call Mark Goddard. I could call any of the top level officials, the Kevin McDonald's, and, and they're always willing to help because as a community, we want the best for the fighters and the sport. So, if there's ever a questionable call that I do, or in a fight that I'm just not sure on, I'll send it to one of them. Say, hey, can you take a look at it and give me your feedback? They may not give me the feedback I want, but they give me the honest feedback, and good, bad, or indifferent. It's a learning experience, and that's the reason why I sent it to them. So, it's nice to be able to reach out to people that brought you in and you respect highly of. So
that's awesome. Have you ever had a situation where you made a judgment call that was maybe controversial or something of that nature? Something that was, I guess, noteworthy in the sense that it put you a little bit in the spotlight.
There's been a lot that have been controversial or not what everybody else would have expected or whatever. Like, for instance, the very first TV fight I did was Chidi Njokuani, Anthony's brother, and I cannot remember the other guy's name, but Njokuani hit him with an elbow to the back and ended up stopping the fight, and it was to his spine. And so I called it a no contest, and people didn't agree with that. However, the circle of referees said, obviously I made the right call. And the fans they pay, they have their opinions, and whether they're right or they're wrong, they got their opinions. So
they want to see blood, man.
Yeah, and I tell the fighters in the back at my rules meeting, half of you guys are going to think I'm the greatest referee, and half of you after tonight are going to think I suck. Because at the end of the day, if they lose, they got to blame somebody. So we seem like we fit the bill. So.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure that very well it comes with the territory.
Absolutely.
So, what if you had to say something along the way, what was really kind of like your making it moment as an official? Because obviously, when you're on the first, we talked about the initial come up, how you went through your courses and getting on the circuit that way. There has to be some ups and downs, some pitfalls along the way as an official in the early stage, like anything out there. What was really kind of that moment where it sunk into you that, yes, this is what, this is me. This is what I'm pursuing, and it's the real deal. I am this.
Sure. Believe it or not, it was the first time I stepped into the cage after the 6-month period of, not getting to, I had passed everything and I was just sitting on the sidelines and I was judging, not reffing. And, that first time I got in the cage, in the back, I threw up. And, a lot of people don't see that side of the thing because it's nerve wracking when you realize that cage door shuts, there's me and 2 other people. And those 2 other people are trying to tear each other's heads off. And, it's my job to make sure the rules are there and it's a fair bout and, they're as safe as possible. So it was then that it sunk in. But, that first year I drove all over the country. And, that's the other thing people don't see is the backside of what we go through and the commitments and sacrifices. That first year I drove, I think it was 65,000 miles.
Wow.
All across the country. And I would just show up at venues where the commission would say, well, you can come, but I don't know that I'll use you. And so I would show up for the hope of just doing one fight, just to, get in the experience. And, sometimes I'd show up and they wouldn't use me. And that's fine too. But, those are sacrifices and commitments that we've all made. And, it's, it pays off.
So I guess to say, I'm sorry, I might have missed this if you had said it. What year did you start on this journey? What was that?
It was 2012, May of 2012.
May of 2012. Okay, yeah. So a full 6-year run
Right.
and change now at this point. So that's awesome. I feel like a lot of people they make like that 5-year mark is their big career jump off point. So you made it past that point, smooth sailing, right?
Well, it's never smooth sailing, but the journey's a blast, so we'll take it that away.
It's all about how you look at it, right?
Absolutely.
So what's next? What's on the horizon for you? I know LFA has events every Friday night for September. That was a big part of their broadcast advertisement. Are you a part of the rest of LFA for the month, or what's going on for you?
No, they're in states that that they're fine. Like in New Jersey, they got plenty out there, and then California, I believe, is one of them. So that those states typically use their local guys, just because you go to California and you've got Mike Beltran, you got Herb Dean, you got David Bell, you got Frank Trigg out there. So they've got qualified and quality officials that they don't need to do that, and so my next one is this Saturday. It's back in South Dakota, and so I'm looking forward to that, and it'll be a good time.
Driving or flying to that one?
I'm driving. I'm probably going to take my son, and we'll probably go through Rapid City, South Dakota, and see Mount Rushmore again, and then hit the event and come home, and yeah, it'll be a good time. Nice.
How long is the drive?
I think that one's like 14 hours, but that's a small drive.
That's a small drive, That's a humble small drive right there,
Right.
for what
Just
most people
nap.
consider. Yep, exactly. How old's your son?
He's 15.
Okay, nice. So gives you some good camaraderie along that long drive right there,
Yeah, he likes to take naps and play his video games, so this is just like going by myself sometimes.
Hey, I can totally understand how that goes. I went out to the Bellator card in Oklahoma at the WinStar in Thackerville back in early July, and my buddy that I brought out on the road with me on the drive back, it's about an 11 and change drive from where we were going, and he definitely fell asleep for a fair chunk of it. So like, all right, well, it's a good thing I'm at least awake during the middle of the day for this drive or whatever, because he was
Right.
just cashed out for the majority. I'd be like, thanks, co-pilot. I just
Right.
on my on the comments from the Peanut Gallery Instagram story, I'd just been well, 3 hours later, co-pilot's still asleep. So, but hey, it was a fun trip. It was an absolute blast out there. Shout out
He
to.
was refreshed when he got there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. By the time that we got home, he was nice and ready to go. But
Right.
it's like, well, I'm now completely just drained from that. Driving through Texas in the dead heat in July was just it was roasting. But I do want to throw a shout out to out of Conquer Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu out there in Ada, Oklahoma. Shout out to Daniel Scary Carey, to Chris Vereen, Brian Grinnell, Cortez Coleman, everybody out there. So thank you guys very much for all the hospitality that you showed while we were out there in Oklahoma.
Nice.
So do you still do a lot of judging?
I actually don't. I rarely do any judging, just because my referee schedule is so tight. However, there are times where I'll go to an event and there will be 2 judges and say 2 or 3 referees, and so one of the off referees does the third judge. So sometimes I'll do that, but just to judge a card, it's probably been 5 years or so since I've done that.
Gotcha. Just interested, always learning about how that works out, how those opportunities may come about. So, just a question for you, as far as being an MMA fan on that end, who's your all-time favorite? Or, give me a rundown of your top couple. Maybe it's hard to give a number one right off the top.
Oh, no, number one's real easy for me, and that's Matt Hughes. I was born and raised in Illinois, right, 25 miles from where he was, and he's only, I think, 2 or 3 years older than me. So, he was a stud in wrestling back then, and his legend, followed and I played baseball, and we played in his hometown, and that was always the big thing is what he was doing and stuff, and that was well before the MMA side of it. He was just one of those guys that everybody knew about. So I always enjoyed watching him, and was happy whenever he fought. And then obviously when he got that train accident, I actually was back in Illinois at the time, and I was only like 15 miles from where that happened. So I'm real glad that he's recovered and he's doing so well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was a devastating thing to hear about that. Matt Hughes is one of my all-time favorites. I wrestled a little bit when I was a kid growing up, but Matt Hughes is one of those guys that I just made me fall in love with the sport even more back then. As a kid watching, growing up, seeing the way that they would do those almost kind of corny UFC promos that were like WWF type of style ones, right, where he was in like the country boy with the big steak and eggs breakfast thing with the whole little play that they had with it. Then they would bring then he would start coming out to the Hank Williams Jr. song. But I love Matt Hughes back in the day, the way that the Carlos Newton slam to the way that the whole Frank Trigg situation played out. I don't know if there's a more memorable moment in a lot of fights overall than him taking the cheap shot against Frank Trigg in the second fight, being able to overcome almost getting tapped out. His face was almost completely purple, being caught up in that choke, was able to get out, pick him up, slam him, and then get him in the choke.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite fights, and that was just. I remember I was watching it live, and that was crazy.
Yeah, no, that's one of my favorite fights of all time to watch, and just the fact that he 9-time world champion.
Yeah,
hard to argue against him being one, not just one of the best welterweights, but one of the best ever.
And people say whatever about Matt Hughes and his book and all that other stuff, but I do believe he's been a great ambassador for the UFC and for the sport itself. And I think I think a lot of him, and I think I'm glad whenever I see him around the events and things like that. Still, I guess he was just in Lincoln at the fight night there. So I enjoy it, and I'm glad that he's doing so well.
Definitely. What about maybe favorite fight of all time, if you had to name one?
Well, actually, I did a fight in Detroit, Yancy Medeiros and Oliveira, and that was a blast to be a part of. And in the moment, I knew it was something special going on, just because it was just so back and forth, and there was so much to it. But it wasn't until afterwards when I sat down and watched it that I realized how good of a fight that actually was. And not just from a official standpoint or anything, but from a fan or an athlete's position. I mean, that had everything. They had knockdowns, they had submission attempts, they had blood, they had a foul. I mean, anything you could imagine, it was there, and it was back and forth. And I thought that was just a phenomenal fight.
Definitely a good fight. I mean, I can only imagine getting to see one of these wars up close and personal. I mean, you're close enough to where the blood's getting slung all over you when it's coming off of those crazy exchanges. So I can't even begin to imagine what it's like being that third person in there for those.
It's amazing.
It maybe not one that you've been in there for, but obviously, been cage side. What's been the aside from that one, what's been the most exciting fight that you've witnessed in person or firsthand live?
Oh man, whew. There's so many of them. I enjoyed the Alvarez and Gaethje fight. I thought that was exciting. I was there for that one.
Yeah.
The Ngannou's knockout of Overeem was phenomenal. I was there for that one. There's just so many, and I guess I've been blessed to have so many. So it's hard to pick out one or two, just because the list is so long of just phenomenal fights.
Either one of those. I mean, spectacular performances. I mean, the Alvarez and the Gaethje, that was an award-winning performance. Then you have, that was at like peak Francis hype. Francis just walking around looking like he's destroying everything in his path before everybody realized that he has no idea how to wrestle. But at that point with Overeem, he just completely sent him into orbit.
Yeah, and the knockout, you can actually see me on the screen because I'm cage side, and it happens within 5 feet of me, and it was just unbelievable because I checked both of those fighters in before they got in the cage, and they were both really big guys.
Yeah.
And so you knew that with Overeem and Ngannou, one of them was getting knocked out. I mean, they weren't there to wrestle. They were there to throw leather, and they had bad intentions. And when it happened, it was an amazing knockout. And I say it's an amazing knockout mainly because Overeem was fine afterwards. It wasn't like he was seriously hurt or anything like that. If he would have been hurt, it would have been different. But it was just a clean knockout, and it was like, man, that was amazing.
Oh yeah, I mean, what did it sound like? I mean, I'm sure you could just hear the crack right then and there.
You could, and as soon as I was looking to my right, and as soon as I had just turned my head to look back, just as Ngannou was throwing it, and when it hit, you heard it, and the crowd erupted, and it was very, it was unreal.
Oh, I could only imagine. From watching it on TV to to being right there. It had to sound close to almost like like the crack of a bat at the baseball game.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Definitely. So with your, I guess, in your taste or in your liking of watching fights, what do you prefer? What in terms of the styles? You mentioned that you've had experience and some background in grappling yourself. Do you like watching a grappler's matchup, or do you like seeing some leather thrown? What's your personal preference as a fan?
Sure, I think it depends upon who's in there. But for me, I appreciate the ground game. I appreciate what they're doing on the canvas, where a lot of people don't, or they, like you said, they just want to see a knockout or someone get bloody or whatever. But there's so much tactical stuff going on when it's on the canvas that people don't realize what's going on. And so for me, I enjoy watching that side of it as well, just because knowing what they're doing and what they're trying to set up and the amount of energy and effort that's going into it, you just really appreciate that. And so like when you got fighters like Damian Maia, I just love watching him in there, whether he wins or loses, just because you can see the wheels turning in his head of what he's going to do and how he's going to do it. And he goes in and generally just imposes his will and makes it happen. So I enjoy that.
I agree. I'm a fan of it myself, but I have trouble with the way the new model of how they have the matchmaking, or some of the way that the at least in the UFC that they've handled some of this process. Because personally, I'm a huge fan of guys like Ben Askren, or a lot of people didn't necessarily like watching John Fitch fight, but it's just because he was so dominating in a ground type of fashion. I like watching those sorts of guys just because they're so technically sound and they're dominant. But I guess I could see how the common fan might not necessarily like it. But I agree with you. I like watching the grappling side of things, because Damian Maia to me is that dude is a work of art.
Yeah, and the other thing that you got to appreciate, you mentioned John Fitch and Ben Askren. You know what they're going to do. They're not coming in and giving you a shock. They are going to grab you, they're going to take you down, and they're going to beat on you. And it's your job to be able to overcome that and to train to defend that. And if you put in 6 or 8 weeks of a training camp already on being a great athlete that they are, and you are unable to accomplish that task, then that should say more about, the John Fitches or the Ben Askrens or those guys, because these guys knew what they were going to do. There's no surprises, and they were still able to do it. So,
right.
For me, it just, you got to have a different level of appreciation for fighters. And they say, like GSP was one-dimensional during his title run of going in and taking them down and just holding them down. Okay, well, that's what he's going to do, and he still did it. Mm-hmm. So give him more credit, because it's not like it was his first fight and nobody knew what to expect from those guys. Everybody knows what to expect, and they still go in and they do it, and they win, and hey, hats off to them.
I agree. I think of it just like any other sport. You know how certain football teams are going to come out and attack you. Well, it's on you to come out and stop it. Like
Sure.
a team who is a dominant reign of force, like like an Alabama or something like. Well, you know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to try to power you to death. Can you stop them?
All right, either you can or you can't.
Right, and it's up to you whether to decide whether you respect their greatness or not, crazy as that sounds, but something has to be said about you knowing exactly what they're going to do and then coming in and still doing exactly that.
Right. That's the way I think. So, yeah.
I got to ask you, because it's an interesting one from everybody that you talk to. Who do you have, Conor or Khabib?
That for me, it really depends where the fight happens. For me, if Conor can keep it on his feet, I think that I think it's his fight. I don't, unless Khabib has improved a ton since the Michael Johnson fight. You could see that Michael Johnson was having success with his punches, and in my belief, Conor's at a different level when it comes to striking than even Michael Johnson. And I think Michael Johnson's fantastic, by the way. And if it goes to the ground, Khabib is just a different animal when it comes to the mat and his wrestling. And so I'm not naive to think that Conor's going to go in and out wrestle him, just like I'm not naive to think that Khabib's going to come in and out strike him. I think wherever the fight takes place, if it's on the ground, I think Khabib wins it. If it's standing, I think Conor wins it. I think it's going to be a phenomenal match. I think I think they said it sold out in like 3 minutes, and that's just one of those fights that is one in however many years we get an opportunity to see, and it's been built up for so long, and so I'm super pumped for that fight card. The whole card looks phenomenal, not just the main event. I mean, that main event is unbelievable, but the other fights on that card is just crazy. I mean, you got, was it Pettis and Ferguson on that card now too? Yep. And I mean, hell, Ferguson's still a champ to some level. I mean, the only reason why he's not is because he got hurt. I mean, Jiminy Crickets, that card is stacked.
No, I agree. Well, and then he's fighting a former world champion in Pettis.
Yeah.
So there's it's a star-studded card for that night. That's definitely for sure. I feel the same way. With your analysis with the Conor and Khabib fight, it's going to be interesting because if Conor can ride out the storm of if Khabib does get him to the ground in that first round, they got to get back on their feet to start the second. So there is going to be if Khabib can't finish him on the ground right away, there's going to be another opportunity that Conor might have, but I also feel like the later the fight goes on, the better the odds are in Khabib's favor.
I think that that is just going to be a great fight. I was just in Vegas, yesterday, and you couldn't have paid me enough money to even think about betting on that fight. I mean, that is going to be unbelievable. Like,
yep, I think it's
one of the best fights I've seen.
Dead even of a fight to call. Of one that I can think of in recent history, just because it's as close or it's as much of a classic styles matchup as you can possibly imagine. You have the grappler and then you have the striker. You have the absolute kiss of death power give you one left hand and you're waking up in 5 minutes type of power from Conor. And then you have the absolutely just completely break your will and make you question your existence, grind it out type of grappling from Khabib. You see the look in the faces that elite level strikers like Edson Barbosa had in that matchup that they, you could tell that he was just, his will was broken at one point when Khabib would just have him on the ground, just pin him up, he would keep a limb completely, immobilized, and was just kind of, just peppering him and just kind of, talking smack the entire time. Like, I must be the best, I am, the way that he was going that way. So it's going to be interesting to see, because you hear stories or, anecdotes coming out of the AKA camp and some of the people that Khabib has brought out, and that he just does not get tired. He'll run through, 4 and 5 training partners before he even starts to think about slowing down for the day. Which, I don't know, if you believe in history, that doesn't bode well for Conor.
Yeah, I mean, I see the things that come out of both of their fight camps, and just the hype for this fight. And I think somewhere I'd read today that they're going to do a couple like press tours or something for the fight. Man, those are going to be can't miss press conferences.
Definitely.
That's. I'm excited. That is, as an official or a fan or whatever it is, these are one of those fights that I'm going to be excited to be watching and just be able to be a part of in any way.
Will you be out there in Vegas for it?
I'm working on it. We'll see.
Nice. Okay. Definitely got to at least ask that right off the top for it. What's your thoughts on the card this last weekend? What did you think about the Woodley, basically derailing the hype train of Darren Till?
Man, Woodley looked good. The thing about Woodley is I don't think anybody's ever really questioned that he's good. It's that again he used his wrestling and grind it out type of thing, and it was almost like he came in to make a statement that that's one aspect, but don't sleep on his other aspect. And Till is one hell of a fighter. Like, That guy I can see being a champion. Like, I totally see him coming back and in a few years probably getting the title. I mean, just hell of a fighter. And Woodley just dismantled him. And dismantled him with ease. I think it came out to like 74-1 in strikes or something. And you watch the Till fights that the way he just picked apart Cerrone and those guys, and it's like, holy smokes, that just tells you where Woodley's at. And then you get, we're talking about the Conor and the Khabib fight. You got this Woodley and Covington fight that they're going to make, and man, that's going to be a good fight. Like that, Covington can talk just as good as McGregor, in my opinion, and sell the fight. And after seeing Woodley and what he did to Till, I don't know. I mean, when the cage door closes, anybody can win. But man, that was super impressive. And if I was a welterweight, I'd be taking a hard look, because that he did not come in and wrestle. I mean, he came in and he destroyed.
Absolutely. That big right hand that he had that dropped Till. For one, you have to give Till credit that that is one tough SOB to be able to have withstood the damage that he did take, because you got to think that's the same right hand that put out legendary chins like Robbie Lawler. Carlos Condit. All those guys. That's an explosive right hand that he wore and was able to kind of withstand some damage for a little bit. But I also thought that if there was a good matchup to kind of play into, and I think both Covington and Till are both very good matchups for Woodley, just because he almost is a guy who is almost Yoelish in a way, that where he'll let himself get backed up to the cage, and then he'll just explode out. And Till is definitely going to be an aggressor.
Sure.
He's going to be someone who is going to keep on, trying to march for, and I think kind of, if you go based off of the way that Covington has approached his last couple of fights, especially the RDA fight, he was a pace fighter. He was pushing forward on him. If you push forward and you leave yourself open to one of those right hands from Woodley, it might be night-night
I agree.
Especially, I think that Tyron Woodley is he's very underrated within his title reign dominance too. And I think one thing that gets really underlooked is his reach that he has. Darren Till was, how much taller, 4 or 5 inches taller, but they had the same reach. So, when that big overhand right hammer is coming down on you, that's pretty advantageous on the Woodley side of things to have those extra couple of inches that match up, with guys that are taller than him, and then especially with guys that are, in equitable size range.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Woodley put his name back out there. I think, whatever beef he's got with other people, I thought it was a good performance, and, I'm anticipating the Woodley Covington fight. They haven't announced it, so I don't know that that's the next fight for him, but, I would like to see that fight, and I think there's a lot of people that would. So,
I agree. There was some internet rumor clamors that were going on today that were saying, that they might possibly make an Usman and Colby fight first to see who would then fight Woodley. But I don't know. It's as much as I am not I don't really like Colby that much personally, but I do think that there has to be some sort of, I guess, merit given to him based off of. Then why did you even do the interim title thing? Was that all just to try to sell views that night? Which, let's be real, that's what it is more times than not. But why? What was any sort of significance to that then? If he was going to be basically, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the shortest belt holder, interim or not, that there's ever been in the UFC?
Yeah, I don't know. With that being said, they still have not announced a main event for Madison Square Garden.
Correct.
So, and Woodley really didn't get dinged up. I don't think he got
zero significant strikes that were landed from Till, which I find absolutely incredible. Stop talking to his title reign dominance again. That's the second time, according to FSN this morning, that he has had zero significant strikes landed on him in a title defense.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and he said himself that that he'd be ready to go for Madison Square Garden. So who knows?
Yeah, I would like to see it, and that would. Look, the co-main event could main event that card. The Diaz and Poirier fight, that's a main event quality fight in itself. So, something comes in, main event above that, that's just going to be one heck of a card.
I couldn't agree with you more. I feel like the UFC has, with whatever the way that, Dana has these personal feuds that sometimes I think are to the detriment of the company overall. Like, you have one of the biggest draws out there in the Diaz brothers period, and you just kind of, whatever the beef is, you don't put them on cards. You miss out on some. I felt that last year when there was the 209 card, to have not had one of them on it was you missed a golden goose in marketing. If you're trying to build all of these money fights that are going to sell, what would have been a bigger situation than having one of the 209 guys on the 209 card? But
right.
As it goes forward, though, now I'm glad to see that that Nate is getting back in there and in the mix. That should be an absolute war because Poirier is white hot right now.
Yeah, and I had read somewhere, I don't remember where, but Nick said he's training to make his comeback now as well since that case in Vegas got dropped or whatever. So yeah, there's just certain fighters that you'll watch just because they're entertaining, whether they win or lose. They bring the fight, and man, I'm looking forward to that co-main event. Both of those guys will bring it. That will not be a boring fight at all, no matter how long it lasts.
No, not at all. And it's going to be a war. They're both bleeders. It's going to be it's going to be something of a spectacle to see. I've also heard rumors that there might be, I don't know how it plays out with the whole USADA situation, but it might be a John Jones spot that's on that Madison Square Garden card.
That's what I had thought they were waiting on because of the USADA thing. But then you got to look at who would he fight, because everybody's taken up. You could say Cormier, but outside of that, who's available at light heavyweight that doesn't Gustafsson have his fight scheduled or?
Well, he was supposed to fight on, I believe, I can't remember which card it was, a couple of weeks back that he pulled off on. It was in August, that card that he was supposed to fight. But I think that's what the rumor was, according to Chael Sonnen on his podcast. that he thought that he was going to be.
Needs to happen too at some point. So I mean,
right.
that certainly could headline it.
You know, that would be a Madison Square Garden worthy type of type of card. Gus versus John Jones. You know, the rematch in that way. John Jones has been in a ton of different training photos from the Jackson Wink camp down there, so he's definitely been very active back in the mix. You know, he never does a very good job of trying to stay quiet or under the radar.
not his MO.
Definitely not. Even in the times where it should be. Right.
So yeah, I hope they announce whether his suspension's over or what's going to happen with it, because he's another fighter that is exciting to watch, and the Gustafsson fight and the Cormier fights, and I mean, it's just like, man, and even the Sonnen fight, I mean, that was solid, So you know what you get with John Jones too, you get excitement. So I personally, I would love to see him fight on that Madison Square Garden card as well. But that's just a fan talking now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm the same, and it's kind of hard, to keep on going to bat for John Jones. I've been a John Jones fan since he first burst on the scene. I'm younger. I grew up within, watching him grow along, and so sometimes just like, God, like, can you just please just get it together for this little bit? And he just keeps on, like, I feel like it's how, if you were a big fan of Mike Tyson back in the day, kind of seeing just the downslide on that end. So I really, really hope that he can redeem, his career, which in some people's eyes he probably never will. But I just, I hope that he can climb back out of this hole, because he's still fairly young in the game to where he can make a long, deep run to maybe turn the ship around.
Yeah, and look, if people question him, I mean, his personal choices maybe, but man, when that cage door closes, if you're questioning him, his legacy in that aspect, then I don't think they understand the sport, because what he's done is just incredible. And yeah, outside the cage, that's a different story. But inside the cage, I think his legacy is pretty cemented. I mean, his only loss is still questionable, as far as whether it should have been a loss or not. And outside of that, I mean, you just put the who's who of who he's fought. I mean, he didn't get an easy road up. So
no, not at all. He was fast tracked, and that fight against Matt Hamill, I still to this day think that, come on, like you're going to you DQ him off of that one, like what your take as an official. What do you think of that?
I wasn't, and here's the thing: is I don't know what. I believe it was Mazzagatti that reffed that. I believe, I don't remember exactly.
I'm pretty positive that you're correct.
But I don't know what he said to him in the back before the fight as far as his commands. I don't know what he was saying in the cage. I don't know what warnings he gave. So, I wouldn't be able to say, I think it was a good call or a bad call, because, only Mazzagatti and John Jones and Matt Hamill know what was said inside the cage. And, that's where you would have to go. I would ask Steve Mazzagatti, and, he'll tell you. He's another good guy. But, for me to say whether it's good or bad, I didn't hear what was said prior to the fight, in the back, and I didn't hear what was said inside the cage. He may have warned him 2 or 3 times or something of the shots or whatever, and then when it happened, it happened. And, I don't know.
That's understandable. That's definitely, that's fair. Because, naturally there's a lot more that goes into a call than what meets the surface. Didn't really think of it in that respect, so... Shit, change my perspective on that just a little bit there. So I see that you got a fight in a Illini jersey on. Big college football fan?
I am, and I'm a big Illinois fan. That's where I was born and raised again. And man, we're 2-0, but I don't expect us to be ranked or anything. I mean, we haven't played the best of best, but I do love Illinois football. And our last, I guess, solid year in my eyes was the Rose Bowl against USC, and I actually went down to that game. And it's been many moons ago, it seems like now, but love college football, and I love the NFL. So I'm a big Bears fan, so we're not going to talk about the game last night, or I'll check my phone again. So yeah.
Well, that's definitely understandable on that end. I have to say that I was in sheer panic mode during the first half in my big fantasy football league. I have Aaron Rodgers as my quarterback.
Right.
So seeing that, all of the memes that were going around on the internet about, like with Simba, like, grabbing at him, like in the Lion King scene, please get up, where he's tugging on Mufasa. That was definitely me as a fan and as a fantasy football participant. I was like, you have got to get up. You can't be going down this easily. Like, this is not happening. But, I do apologize for, that might have been a little bit of salt in the wound there, because A-Rod...
He was.
He came back and was a bad man. I do have...
That's our biggest rival is the Packers. So, I mean, you go into Lambeau Field on opening day and you play such a flawless first half, and then it just falls apart. I mean, that's heartbreaking, because for me, that sets a tone for the season. Other people may think differently, but, how much did they take out of us and our will and our spirit in there? Because that was a game we should have won. And it just slipped through our hands. And, there was plays we could have made, and, that's in every game. But, we'll see about week 2, I guess.
Exactly. You gotta be able to rebound, I guess. But I
want
want
to. We're not going undefeated. That pressure's off.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I got to thank the Bears for taking Khalil Mack out of the AFC West. That is definitely as a Broncos fan, something that I have to thank the Bears for, getting him completely out of the AFC. Then at this point,
well, listen, our Bears, what we're known for is defense. So when we got him, I thought, and granted, he didn't have a ton of training, camp or anything. So and I still thought he looked good. Like, man, that guy is a game changer. So hopefully, that's what we need, and we can get Trubinsky in there and get him some more game time, and not have so much pressure of being down 45-0.
Yep, so, exactly.
Yeah.
That's definitely hope. There's a lot of stuff that's been building in Chicago's favor. That's for sure. I can say that for at least that you guys have a pretty solid tight end. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. The guy that you picked up from Philadelphia, the guy who threw the touchdown pass in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I
off the top of my head.
Name is slipping me right off the top of my head. But there's been some turnaround with some stuff going on there, and I think Trubisky, he's a good athlete. As long as you can keep him protected, he's going to be all right.
We got Monday night against the Seahawks, which the Broncos just beat. So, we'll see. Hopefully good. It's in Chicago, so that's always a positive.
Definitely, the Monsters of the Midway hopefully are back a little bit for your sake, bringing that Khalil Mack attack.
Yeah, I agree.
Bobby, as we start to wrap this up, is there anything that you want to get out there for the listeners? Anything that you want to share? Shout out, mention anything?
No, not really. Just I appreciate everybody that follows me and supports me, and tracks where I go, and comments and stuff. And if there's ever a question anybody has, I answer every one of my messages. It may take me a minute to get back to you, but I do answer every message that comes across Instagram or Facebook myself. So yeah.
Well, that's awesome. That you keep a ground level to the fan engagement there, because it is cool to to see someone who is on the big stage. UFC, LFA, everything across the board. That's awesome.
Yeah, so if any of the listeners have any questions, or you have questions, just shoot them to me. I'll get back to you and give you my take. And a lot of people will send me questions about certain fights that go on, like on Saturday night. If something controversial happens, I know Sunday morning I'll open up my inbox and there'll be 400 messages or questions, and but that's what it's about. And I go to arenas and talk to people and stuff. The fans are what make the sport. If there were no fans, whether me and the two fighters are in there or not, if the fans aren't there, the fighters aren't going to be there either. So, that's what it's all about.
That is awesome. What's it feel like, or what's it mean to you to be recognized by fans in that respect? Because naturally, as an official, they're not reeling out any sort of promo posters or highlight reels of your calls, if you will, the way that they would putting on a fighter's promo.
Right. The calls you get on promos are the ones you don't want. For me, the best night is when nobody knows I'm in the cage, because that means everything went smoothly, and I didn't have to interject. So it's nice to be recognized and to be able to give back. And I do a lot of charity work and, speaking engagements and stuff as I go to different towns. So, I enjoy that sort of thing, and it's humbling to be able to give back.
That's awesome. Well, I really do want to thank you for taking the time to come on the show today. It's awesome to have someone who's been there and done that all across the board coming on. So thank you very much. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime you want me back or anything, just let me know and we'll figure it out.
That sounds awesome. I really do appreciate that. It's been a blast talking to you and just kind of hearing about your journey along the way.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and have a wonderful evening.
Yep, absolutely. So, I just want to, on the outro, throw out a quick couple of shout-outs of my own before we part ways with you. Want to throw a shout-out to everybody down at Factory X, especially my guys Jordan Titoni, Yusuf Zalal, Austin Jones, Selena Rowland, down there in Port City MMA in Mobile, Alabama. Mr. Justin Osborne, he's got a fight on September 15th. That's going to be available to be streamed on flowcombat.com. Selena also, she'll be fighting for Jackson's MMA Renegade Fight Night Chapter 2 down in Pueblo, Colorado, October 6th. Hopefully, then my boy Daniel Scary Carey out of Ada, Oklahoma, conquer BJJ. They're looking at some potential Bellator opportunities when the November card comes back down to the Southwest. And then just a couple others, my community at Hustle Island, as well as the Terphouse, the best in the CBD industry. Got Terps, I sure do. And then also Lion League Music for the best in the box state music that's on the up and rising, up and coming. Make sure that you give them all a follow along. I'm Jordan Kurtz. This is referee Bobby Wombacher. Thank you guys very much for viewing. Head to www.cftpg.com to pick up your official merchandise now. Thank you guys very much.
Dinner place for Judas, niggas claiming family, I no sacrifice. Grip a 40, sip a 40 for them gutter pains. Keep a release on the mobile for them show me nice. I ain't living right, long live the game. Maximize capital, finite physical. Fuck metaphorical, my whole life digital. Dash for that play, non playing, I never play though. And chords get stringy when you tired line and queso. Dímelo mijo, that's what they say when I free flow. Might wet that sweet spot, that's less love me flowing. From no M state, still screaming B-mo. My time is my time, homie, I speed slow. No eyes, strong ties, fuck a Rico. Give thanks, drive slow and stack peso. Kiss your minds out through my little beso, yeah. Lay low and stay cool, the shit stressful, boy.
That's why I stay high. Look, there they go, macadamian, don't know what brainy in a match of cranium, so we roll up on you like Damien in that Mercedes Benz. Got weed and drink with some lady friends who got the latest shit, but they fans and shit, so I ain't hit. Damn, here go the bass again, renovate your place again. We on the Vegas strip, rocking straight out that bodega shit. You know we so legit, with no limit like I'm Soldier Slim, but I'm more like PMC. Pinkies up, feel me? Got my soldiers with me and my youngins down the ride. Got some bread up in the hills, got some sauce up on the side. Got Tino in here working like a nigga working nights. Said your girl just ain't his type. She just trying to catch a ride and she with it. And she so committed. Damn, your boy is fresh to death and you ain't even seen it. We cut from a different cloth and you can check my linens. Cause I was trying to stand out when you was trying to fit in. Adios.